enlightened, chapter 24 today. Sign of renewal. Go ahead, Philip.
The signs of renewal, of a renewal. At the household gathering, the master began to speak persuasively. When the divine kingdom is at the gates of humankind, the soul of the world will be renewed. The person who is the most powerful will not be the one who is the most ruthless, but rather the one who loves the most. Conquerors will not be those who war against foreign enemies to the death in rivers of blood, but rather those who combat the inequity and ignorance that lies within them until evil is wiped out in the realms of their own nature. The most eloquent will not be those of the most beautiful speech, but rather those who combine holy words with actions to raise the quality of life wherever they may be. The noblest will not be those who hold the largest number of titles, granting them the transitory control of ephemeral lands on earth, but those who most intensely accrue the acclaims of love and gratitude in the hearts of mothers and children, the sick and the elderly, loyal and honest persons, hard-working and upright persons, and humble and kind ones. Those who are the most respected will not be the dispensers of gold and armed might, but rather those with the purest hearts. Those who are the holiest will not be the ones who isolate themselves on altars of supreme spiritual pride, avoiding contact with those who suffer because they are afraid of becoming dishonored and unclean, but rather those who come down from their aggrandizement, extending fraternal hands to the wretched and suffering, raising their delacerated souls to the realms of joy and understanding. The purest will not be those who flee from communicating with evil, avowed criminals, but those who dive into the mire to save their fallen brethren without contaminating themselves in the process. Those who are most knowledgeable will not be the ones who have the most books and theories, but the ones who, even though they know little, try to light a lamp in the darkness that still envelopes their closest neighbor. The divine friend rested his lucid eyes on the clear night that was shining outside in the heart of nature, made a long pause and emphasized, in that sublime age, people will not leave their homes to war in storms of blood and tears against their neighbor due to their desire for conquest or race hatred, because they will be busy waging war against the darkness of ignorance, the open wounds of illness, the anguish of hunger, and moral torture of all hues. When the plow reaches the opulent chariot of victors in public displays of collective grandeur, when the edifying book takes the place of the sword in the minds of the people, when goodness and wisdom preside over human competition so that good individuals may be revered, when personal sacrifice on behalf of all constitutes the true honor of individuality so that peace and love do not lose their place in one's life, then there will be a new humanity in the luminous cradle of the divine kingdom. At this point, the sweet and sovereign word made a slight pause, and there outside, in the warmth of the calm night, The resplendent stars sparkling high in the sky seem to extol the distant era.
Thank you, Philip. So when we read this passage, we cannot forget the days that we live today because it's so appropriate for our days. It gives the intention that this should be in the editorial, the first page, or every newspaper in this country and throughout all the countries. In all social media, the ones of the right, the ones of the left, the ones of the center, throughout this planet, something that we all should read, educate ourselves into it, that we all should make our decisions on when it's time to choose our leadership, to use something like this as our guideline, or perhaps the most important aspect in our decision making when we have to choose those who are going to lead us. I don't think there is anything more contemporaneous and more needed to us in these days that we are living now. So the signs of renewal, the so-called divine kingdom, this divine kingdom is promised by us, that's promised by us by the law of progress. For us who more than believe, understand that we are in this process of progress, we have to expect better days ahead. The law of progress makes us believe in it. But of course, this law of progress is for those who put the effort to enter in this divine kingdom through the narrow door, as Jesus told us, right? And once we get, not even in there, because Jesus says at the gates, when we get at the gates of this wonderful place, then we're going to see things with different eyes. We're going to measure things with different metric systems. Power will no longer be measured by brute force, not going to be measured by monetary power or bellic power, but it will be measured by the amount of love that one has. Love being this limitless credit card that allow us to acquire basically everything. But a love that is calculated by the frequency of the selfless act that we do in prol of others. And those will be considered the true conquerors. Will not be those who will conquer peoples or pieces of land, those who conquer the external, but it will be those who conquer the internal. The conquerors will be recognized based by the fearless combat that one will battle with his against our own ignorance and vices that still resides in us until all the evil is defeated. To fulfill, be for the ones who have the courage to fight the good internal fight. And all the great speeches, all the eloquent words, all the especially these days that the social medias is loaded with eloquent speakers and all kinds of things. But all those speeches, all those eloquence will only carry any value when it's followed by action, an action that brings about goodness for the community. We're going to have to, in the kingdom of, of heavens, of God, we can do the walk, we can do the talk, but you must do the walk. The idea of nobility, that will be reserved for those who, by their actions, generate sentiments of gratitude of other people's heart and promote hope to the afflicted and alleviate pain and suffering, not by titles, not by hereditary, but to act in assistance of those who need any kind of assistance, of course. The so-called purity of heart, what would that be, right? That would be when we are free from any sentiment that is contrary to fraternal love, any sentiment that is contrary to charity. That is what will command respect from everyone. That will be a true respect, not fear. The, the power, bellical or monetary power, will carry no value in terms of demanding respect from us. The holiness, the titles of holiness, that will not be for the one, that will be reserved for the ones who are who humble themselves and mingle with the people, the commoners, to go out on the streets in order to share with the commoners, with the people on the street, their wisdom, their moral conquest, putting the effort to elevate them to where they find themselves right now, to bring the common people to a higher level where those individuals find themselves through their own effort. The ones who will lead by example. This merit of purity, that purity is not going to be measured by the avoidance and the isolation from all evil, to staying away from the criminals, from the sinners. But the purity will be the title of those who go down, to penetrate the swamps of the lost souls, to rescue them, not not contaminating themselves along the way. I think this is very important. The Puritans will not be those who free from communicating with evil, avoid criminals, but those who dive into the mirror to save their fallen brethren without contaminating themselves in the process. That requires a good amount of vigilance and prayer to make sure that when you go deep down into darkness, that your light stays up and bring about light to others, not the other way around, that the darkness overwhelms your own light and you become one of them. One must be prepared for this. One must have the prayer and the vigilance at all times. to maintain this moral authority in every circumstance that we face ourselves. The knowledge, the knowledge that we acquire through our own effort, through our merit, that we work from to learn what we have learned, like what we are doing here right now. But that the value of that knowledge will be directly proportional to the knowledge that we share with our brothers and sisters along the way. For those who have ears to hear, of course, that we follow the suggestion of Christ, go and teach, go and knock. If the door does not open, shake the sand of your sandal and move on. Humility is pretty much required for this work. The knowledge that we gain, again, our merit, but if you just keep it to ourselves, is of no value. It's still a knowledge, but doesn't carry any value if it does not bring about any goodness to the community. And we see each one of those items that Jesus speaks about, it's almost like he's telling us, this is what I come to show you guys. This is what I am doing here right now. We clearly see that in each one of those things, the titles of holiness, the power, the ability to conquer, every single thing is an example of Jesus brought an example of how to act. And if you go back to the very first sentence, I think it's interesting. It says, when the kingdom is at the gates of humankind. And of course, in my ignorance, when I saw that the kingdom is at the gates of humankind, it should not be the other way around. It should not be when humankind is at the gates of the kingdom. It's not we that are moving to that place. It's that place that's moving towards us. Of course, when the original is correct. Right? It says exactly that. When a divine kingdom is at the gate of humankind, not the other way around. And then we have to think about that. And we go back to the speech of Jesus, I think when it's in the Gospel of John, when the Pharisees ask him or challenging him perhaps, when will the kingdom of God come? And Jesus answered that the kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed, nor people will say, look, here it is, or there it is. For in fact, the kingdom of God is among you, or in some translations says, is within you, which eliminates the idea of a place, of course, right? Which Jesus came to us at that time and tell us that what spiritual states they have is a state of mind. That this kingdom of God is already within us, but unfortunately it's still buried in the mud of our ignorance. It's still not be able to shine bright because it's being dumped by our pride, by our selfishness, because we seek to conquer externally, not internally. Because we still believe that power is in the bank account or the arm or the army of a community. When you redirect those definitions to our internal fight and we conquer our ignorance, when we conquer our pride, our selfishness, then the kingdom will shine bright. And it's interesting that it says at the gate of humankind. I mean, it's not even penetrated there yet. That perhaps it's not completely penetrated there yet. It's not for us yet. But only to get at the kingdom, at the gate of this kingdom, you see the difference, the transformation that will be to all humankind. So I think that chapter is like a prescription that Jesus brings. It's like a guide of how to, right? Individually and collectively. How to allow this kingdom within us to externalize outside of us. So we can be immersed by this kingdom, not the way around, the other way around. It's in us, but it's a prisoner, is a hostage of our ignorance. In order to liberate that kingdom within us, we need to do the exercise. And Jesus brought to us in his daily living, in his actions, in his teachings, the way to keep that kingdom brighting, light bright so strong within us that it's overtake us, that it goes outside of us and is externalized basically in the exercise of charity. And in order to exercise charity, since charity is this sum of all virtues, we have to put down, or at least not act. And it's still the selfishness that we have within us, the pride that we have within us. And that requires work, tremendous work. But by doing so, we will be at the gate of this kingdom. We allow this kingdom to almost act within us in a way that it will become our normal. That's the only way that we know how to live our lives. That's the only way that we will comprehend the definition of a conqueror, the definition of power, the definition of nobility, the definition of purity of heart. In the field, working in pro of the community. Any questions, any comments?
Yeah, you read that. It's one. The conclusion is how far we are from it. But again, the objective here, the master, is to give us the path, the road, the understanding of what is needed. And it's very easy for us to start judging everything that is happening outside of ourselves, but the real work starts within, right? If we don't do the work ourselves, we are not going to be part of this divine kingdom when humanity arrives at it. So I think it's for to read and reflect, not to get discouraged, but to get committed to make the changes necessary within us.
Yeah, because the transformation of the community starts with transformation of each individual doing their part, doing their job. And then all things will fall into place.
Yep.
Okay, so this one is also very, very interesting, very important one also. The visit from truth.
On a certain occasion, the master said that only the truth would set people free. And maybe because he was unable at first to grasp the vast extent of the statement, Peter asked him during the home worship service, Lord, what is truth? An enigmatic look appeared on Jesus' face, and he answered, complete truth is complete divine light. However, humankind is still far from being able to bear its sublime brightness. But perceiving that the fisherman was eager for further enlightenment, the heavenly friend thought for a few minutes and said, the dark cave where the daylight never entered, there lived a devout man who prayed for divine assistance. He claimed to be the unhappiest of men. However, in his blindness, he felt he was better off than everyone else. He complained about the stench of the place where he lived. The contaminated air is suffocating me. He cried pitifully. He begged for a door that would set him free and lead him to the light of day. He claimed to be strong, capable, and useful. Why was he stuck here in this painful seclusion? He wept and howled, laying bare his afflictions and demands. What were the reasons for him being forced to live in that unbearable environment? When our Father saw his Son making incessant pleas amid rebelliousness and bitterness, he was deeply touched and sent faith to him. This sublime virtue exhorted him to trust in the future and to persist in prayer. The wretched man felt somewhat consoled, but in no time at all he went back to his complaining. He wanted to escape from the dung heap, and since his tears increased even more, the Almighty sent hope to him. This emissary wiped his perspiring brow and spoke to him about the eternality of life, trying to dry his desperate tears. For this, he asked for his calmness, resignation, and strength. The poor man appeared to get better, but after a few hours, he went back to lamenting. I can't breathe, he claimed in despair. Sympathetic, the Lord decided that charity should pay him a visit. This new messenger caressed and fed him and spoke kind words to him as if it were an unselfish mother. Even so, because the miserable man continued his shouting in rebelliousness, the compassionate Father sent truth to him. When this bearer of knowledge made itself visible in the form of a great light, the unfortunate man saw himself for what he really was, and he was stricken with dread. His body was a monstrous mass of pustulous sores from head to toe, and he realized, to his horror, that he was in fact the very cause of the unbearable environment in which he lived. The poor man trembled and staggered about, and noting that serene truth had opened the door to his freedom, he was horrified of himself. Without any courage to think about healing himself, rather than looking his visitor straight in the eye in order to learn how to cleanse and purify himself, he ran off in terror in search of another cave where he could hide the misery that he alone had caused. The master paused at length and then said, "This is what happens to most people When faced with reality, they feel they have the right to receive all the eternal Father's blessings, and they cry out loudly, begging for heaven to help them. When they are aided by faith, hope, and charity, they are at first consoled, and then they become disconsolate. They believe then disbelieve, feeling timid, angry, and hesitant. However, when truth shines down on them, revealing the real state they are in, they are usually quick to run off in search of dark hiding places where they can cultivate their delusion.
Thank you. I think this chapter is equally so powerful, so strong. The visit for the truth. So Jesus told to the crowd, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The truth will liberate you. That gives, that opens to the question of what is truth. And let's keep in mind that this is a small group now, right? This is not thousands of people listening to Jesus. No, there's a very small group of those perhaps better prepared to receive more enlightenment from Jesus than the whole group, the whole community. And Jesus says what is truth. And the definition of truth by Jesus, complete truth is complete divine light. If you go to a regular dictionary, if you just let artificial intelligence, define it for you in your computer, it will be what is in alignment or what aligns with reality or fact. I think no one will disagree with that, right? And if you also search, also let artificial intelligence brings to you, it says, what is the Bible definition of truth? What truth is according to the Bible, to the gospel, perhaps, right? Then it would be with aligns with God's reality, character, and will, not just fact or appearances. And we see over here that Jesus defined truth more in the sense that goes beyond the truth in accordance to the studies of laws in the court of law, perhaps, right? But is that divine light? If God is all perfection, all wisdom, all goodness, then it is in God's light, in God's teachings, in God's laws that we have the complete truth. Now, equally important is that, however, mankind is still far from being able to bear its sublime brightness. We all want the truth. Can we handle it? We all want the truth. Will you understand it if it's presented to us? There is one metaphor of Emmanuel that says that one time people on earth, everyone throughout the planet, keep asking God that they wanted the truth. They want to know the truth. So God one day said, okay, I'll give it to you. And he wrote the whole truth in the big piece of glass. And from the highest, where God resides, you just threw it down on earth. When that big piece of glass reached atmosphere, it was shattered in small little pieces and scattered throughout the planet. And unfortunately, nowadays, we walk around and we find one little piece of that broken glass. We put in our hands and say, here I have the whole truth in my hand. Not understand that you only have the smallest little teeny piece of that truth. And it is by the work of putting those pieces together that you eventually will have that complete piece of the glass that contains all the truth. And more than that, we find the little piece through our work that we are able to hand in our hand at that time. There is the passage on our book that we just finished reading on Mondays. The Living Springs in chapter 173 is before the light of the truth, right? And that Emmanuel says that the message of Jesus is very clear, that you will not be set free by aspects of the truth or by temporary truth. We hold on the circle of our impassioned affirmations. So that the truth that we seek, this truth that will set us free, is not by the little tiny piece that we find through our own work. And because of our impassioned affirmations and the seekers of beliefs of our limited studies, we now, because of our pride, think that we have the whole truth in our hands. With humbleness, you understand you have a little tiny piece and you have a lot of work to do in order to find more pieces to better understand that truth. So in his parable here, this such a wise parable, of course, like everything else from Jesus. A man inside of a cave, dark cave, where he could not see anything, lived in a not good life, Smell was horrible, the air was filthy, and he was a devoted man. It's interesting that most of the parables, Jesus don't put over there a disbeliever or someone or an atheist or someone who is a contrarian to the divinity. Most of the cases, if you go back and read case by case, you see that in his parables, he was the devoted man. He was a man who prays, a man who accepts the divinity as the savior, so to say, right? And I think that's very telling to us that this acceptance, this belief, it's good, of course, is important, but you need to go way far above it, right? The man lived over there, and in his belief, in his faith, he prayed and he asked things to be done for him. It's interesting that he does not ask for strength, for wisdom, for courage. He has the things to be done for him, for him to be removed of that situation as if by magic, It just transformed his life by the grace of God, so Como said, right? You don't see on his asking, on his petitions over here, give him the strength, give him the power, give him the active resignation. No, change my life. I don't deserve this. I am a good person. I don't do any harm. Get me out of the situation. And God, in his infinite love, sent him his workers of good. First, and there is a sequence, right? First faith, then hope, then charity, and lastly the truth. There is a sequence over here also. Faith first. Faith must be that foundation. Faith is the stronghold that can support hope, that can support charity, and can allow us to deal with truth. So first God gives this guy the faith. He already had some, right? As I said over here, he was a devout man, the man who prayed already. But of course, that's not enough. You have all the faith in the word and do not act on it. Is again just a useful tool that is not being used. Then God sent him hope. It's very important. It's very difficult. I don't know if it's possible to have hope without faith. Faith in oneself, faith in God, faith in Jesus, faith in Buddha, faith in Krishna. But the faith that there is a power that's superior than us, that is much stronger, as if we have hope, we can somewhat wait for that great power to come and assist us or guide us or illuminate the path that we should take. It brings some comfort, but not enough. Does not move the individual to do the walk. In the case of this person, then God gave him charity. Now, charity is you can see it almost as a verb, right? It's an action, something that you must do, right? The ability to put love into action. And for my reading here, for my understanding, he kind of felt to use this tool as well. And eventually God sent him the truth. And the truth, although good, not always pleasant, although sometimes necessary, can be quite painful, can reveal things that we don't want to be revealed, but that will be revealed when the time is right. And the truth reveals that his very difficult situation, all this smell, everything does come from him himself, that he was the source of the bad smell. His body was covered with sores, that was purulent sores that was creating all that smell. So in face of that truth, and in order for that truth to come in, God provided light to that cave, right? He make it bright so he could see himself. And then he understood that he himself was the cause of it. And not being able to deal with that light, what did he do? He ran and looked to find another cave that was also dark, where he would not see himself, would not blame himself for what was happening to himself, and continue with his lamentations and petitions without doing did the work required to eliminate the soreness of his own body. Again, I said in the beginning that these conversations, what is in this book, was limited to a small group in his house, the disciples and family members of the disciples, one here, one there, and a common conversation, but was for those who were ready to receive this kind of information from Jesus, not the whole crowd. Because too much light is also dangerous. Because you cannot use the truth as a blade to cut the pride of individuals, to put individuals in a state of confusion, not knowing what to do. But at the same time, that divine providence would not expose you to the truth that you are not ready to handle. So that individual, after received all those great tools, the faith, the hope, the charity, had received all the necessary tools to use in order to face the truth, face his own limited, tiny little piece of truth. And not even that was small enough for him to handle. Even that it was way too big for him to handle. But in reality, he could have handled. He had all the tools. He had the faith, he had the hope, he had the charity already. And again, charity being this big umbrella that encompasses all the virtues. So he had the strength to do it. Not easy, but definitely doable. Otherwise, divine providence would not expose him to that truth without being able to deal with that. And does not expose it to everyone, the truth. If you remember passage, the same question that Peter asked, what is the truth? Pontius Pilatus asked Jesus at just before his crucifixion, and Jesus gave no answer. His answer was silence, because Pilate was not able to deal with that truth at the moment, because it would do no good for him at that moment, because he would be completely ignored, and was not his time yet to deal with that truth. I'm sure that he, Pontius Pilatus, have to deal with that. Eventually would receive, when he was ready, receive his piece of truth in his hand. So Jesus spoke to a small group of people. And then when the consoler came, the promised consoler came, he brought this conversation, this truth that at that time was just a small group of people, to everyone. Now it's accessible to everyone. And by everyone, I mean spiritist or non-spiritist. This book is available to anyone. You don't have to be affiliated with this or that group to have access to it. But it's that to everyone. And of course, again, for those who have the ears to hear and the eyes to see, which makes me personally believe that what was one time limited for a few, now it's open to everyone because everyone is ready for it. Jesus said he would send the consoler to say things that he could not say at that time because you were not ready. and to remind us of things that we would have forgotten. And Spiritism does exactly that. It brings us these pieces of truth, shined some aspects of the truth, bring some of the pieces of the truth for us to put the puzzle together. I don't believe it's the whole puzzle yet, because you can't handle all that yet, as Jesus said. No humankind is too far from being able to bear its sublime brightness. But humankind is now able to bear a lot more brightness than at the time when he said that stories. And the spirituals bring us these extra pieces of the truth for us. But it's only of value if we use it as a tool for our betterment. It cannot be or should not be another tool that you put aside for later. Cannot be a tool that we will avoid because it's not so easy to deal with. Like the man in the cave who would rather stay in darkness and continue to complain and continue to ignore those truths. Because the problem is we cannot ignore knowledge. We know. And if you know, it is for a reason. It was for purpose more than a reason, an objective more than a cause. To put it to action. We need to face the truth with courage, with determination to act, not let it be another tool that we put in the drawer. Perhaps later we open and use it as to use. No, we are the workers of the last hour, right? The last hour is here. We need to put those tools to work. You need to face those truths that we have progressed to be able to see it now. Far from being the whole truth, the whole bright that we cannot handle yet, but there's a lot here that we can handle. It makes me think, let's say, like the ego mother, that eventually you kick the juvenile ego out of the nest. But only after her, the mother, have provided to that juvenile ego all that was needed for it to be able to fly with their own wings and conquer the skies. Divine providence would not expose us to the truth if we're not ready for it. If we're not able to use our own wings to fly and conquer the skies for ourselves. So I think it is imperative that we use those lessons over here and put them into action, using the tools that we have, the tools of faith, the tools of hope, the tools of charity, that give us the support, the strength, the wisdom to face the truth that we are able to face at this time. And we have examples, right? Individuals who have transformed those tools into action. So many out there. I don't want to go through the examples right now. Is there any questions, any comment? In that chapter 173 of the of the book Living Springs of Emmanuel, he says over there that I'm going to read just a few things over here. To grasp the truth is to comprehend our responsibilities. I think this is very powerful. To grasp the truth is to comprehend our responsibilities, is to do what is our job to do. To discern the truth is to renew our own understanding and make our life a field of responsibility for what is best. True freedom can be found only in our submission to a duty faithfully fulfilled. Therefore, to know the truth is to realize the meaning of life. And the meaning of life, according to Emmanuel himself, since we can't really define life, he says life is action, is motion. We put things is motion, not no action, but motion. Everything living is in a constant process of motion. And you need to use those tools, faith, truth, charity, into motion to take care of our responsibilities. Make sure that we use all those tools, producing all the good that we can. Comments, questions?
That's such a powerful message, right? Such a powerful chapter. And I think nowadays we've seen a lot of alleged truths, right? And to be able to discern between the wheat and the chaff, right? To be able to handle the truth. It reminds me of that old movie that maybe some of you have watched with Jack Nicholson, right? And Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise said, "I want the truth," and Jack Nicholson answers, "You can't handle the truth. You cannot handle the truth." I think it's many of us cannot handle the truth. That's the reality. Because it's too much for like this individual. He couldn't handle the truth. That's why he ran away to another cave. But if the truth appeared to him, it's because he was ready. He didn't want to face it, but he was ready.
Yeah, I think that's important point. It's not that him was not able to, that he chose. In reality, it was a choice that he made. That was the many of us are making, right? Of not doing, because if it God provide that, is because he could handle. Not say it would be easy, pleasant, but he could handle. What was that choice that we make out of laziness, out of pride, out of selfishness, the very time that we pretend that you don't see the truth, that we ignore the truth, that we find excuses not to put that truth into action. I think there's a problem happening today. This is myself think, of course, here, not the doctrine, please. That I come to this point that we're going to have to make the decision of what are you going to follow, God or Mammon, that we're going to have to get out of the wall and jump to one side or another. And when that time comes, we not being able to really accept and follow the paradigm that Jesus brings to us. We find excuses, we try to hide ourselves, we try to hide the truth that Jesus bring to us. And very often we look for other sources that give us some degree of comfort, but not by not accepting this paradigm that he bring to us, and we go back perhaps into the First Testament, and there we will find some quotations that bring about that I can still be violent, I can still be prideful, I can still be angry. It says over here by this prophet here, there, in different, all in other different things. I think that's why a lot of Christians seek to spirituality somewhere else, because the truth that he brings may requires a lot of work from us, just like for that man required tremendous amount of work, and we try to shine away from that work that we need to do. And that's why Christ comes and says, you heard what was said in many occasions. In truth, I tell you. So, in accordance with the divine light, I tell you, bring to us a new paradigm, something that we need to take that's new for us and leave behind all those old ones. They were good one time. It was perfect for one time in life, but with his advance, with the coming of Christ, we have this new set of truth that we are now able to face. And on top of that, for us, comes Spiritism with a third revelation, bring us some more light, some more truth for us to take, and we need to fully take these tools and put them to work. Any more comments? Okay, the last one of the day, the merit of service.
Philip, the old fisherman from Capernaum, was enraptured with Jesus' explanation of a text from Isaiah and began to comment on the difference between the righteous and the unrighteous in order to point out the merit of saintliness. The master listened calmly, and perhaps to prevent too much discussion of the subject, he kindly told the following story. There once was a Pharisee who led an irreprehensible life and had reached a social position of great public respect. He spent days on end in the temple praying and fasting. He knew the law like no one else. From Moses to the last of the prophets, he had memorized the most important texts of the Revelation. When he walked down the street, he was held in such esteem that even the children bowed in reverence before him. He had consecrated himself to the holiest of holies, and he lived a perfect life amid the sinners of his time. He ate meagerly, wore a spotless tunic, and abstained from speaking with anyone he deemed unclean. However, it so happened that there was a widespread plague in a city near Jerusalem, and an angel of the Lord came down to help offer aid to the sick and needy in the name of divine providence. But he needed the industrious hands of a man through which he could work without delay on behalf of the ill and suffering. He looked to the holy Pharisee, known in the heavenly court for his reiterated vows of spiritual perfection, but the devoted man believed himself to be so deeply immersed in his thoughts of cleanliness that he didn't have even the tiniest bit of room in his heart to consider any thought of helping the victims of the epidemic. How was he to lend a hand to the divine messenger in this matter when he avoided the least bit of contact with the common world, which in his mind he regarded as a valley of squalor? The angel persisted in trying to find someone. However, because the plague was serious and there was no time to waste, the messenger left the Pharisee and turned to other lovers of the law, but none of them believed they were in a position to help. No one wanted to put themselves at risk. In light of these excuses not to help, the messenger from above found an old criminal who wanted to change his ways. Through invisible threads of thought, the angel invited him to follow him. The old thief really did want to change, so he didn't hesitate a second. He hearkened to the angel's gentle coercion and quickly devoted himself enthusiastically and genuinely, offering his robust and authentic cooperation to the ministry of aid and salvation. He buried bodies, concocted medicines that were fitting for the situation, sowed encouragement, relieved the afflicted, renewed the spirits of the sick, freed countless little children who were threatened by the harm, created services of consolation and hope, and in doing so, won solid friendship in heaven, thereby advancing remarkably on the path towards paradise. Those present listened to this little story between admiration and disappointment, and since no one said anything, the Lord commented after a lengthy pause. Virtue is always noble and venerable, but one must not crystallize it as if it were a rare but useless jewel. If love covers a multitude of sins, then sanctifying service, which draws inspiration from it, can bring converted sinners the companionship of the angels. The idle righteous, on the other hand, will have to wait for such companionship. Seeing that his listeners had withdrawn into silence, the Lord closed the home gospel worship so that repose could bring his disciples the many blessings of peace and meditation beneath the star-studded sky.
Okay, the lesson for the day, merit of service. When I read this passage, I see this as just, not just, but as a perfect match, or better yet, a practical example of everything they read in chapter 24. The redefinition of conqueror, of purity, of nobility, of wisdom, being redefined by Jesus as those instruments of action towards assistance of the people, to the people. So in the discussion of righteous versus unrighteous, Jesus brings the example again. He goes again. A Pharisee who led an irrepressible life and had reached a social position of great public respect. He didn't take an example of a low-life individual. An individual with some degree of faith, an individual who spent days on end in the temple praying and fasting. He knew the law like no one else, from Moses to the last of the prophets. He had memorized all the important texts of the Revelations. He was very well respected by the community because of his wisdom. I would assume there would be one of those who could put up very eloquent, beautiful speeches and prayers and show off his wisdom, cause admiration to everyone else, right? And on the other side, You put an ex-criminal who wants to improve, who was seeking for opportunity to make himself better, right? In light of these excuses not to help regarding the Pharisee, the message from above found an old criminal who wants to change his way. Want to change his way is a very, very important statement here. And Jesus told that near Jerusalem, not in Jerusalem. Again, putting Jerusalem as the place where you want to reach in terms of conquering virtues and eliminating vices, moving towards Jerusalem. Jerusalem was symbolically, okay, a pure place. So Jerusalem could not be victimized by this kind of pandemic, right, or epidemic. But near Jerusalem, there was an epidemic going on of a very bad disease that was killing many and bringing a lot of suffering throughout. And an angel was sent to bring assistance for the needy, Higher spirits were sent over there to help the afflicted in that area suffering from that epidemic. But the higher spirits, they need bodies to work. And those bodies must be commanded by spirits who are willing to do the work, receiving the guidance from the good spirits and put them into action, put them to work, right? And of course, they look for the ones who supposedly were ready to do that, like this Pharisee. A man who knew all the books, who was full of knowledge, but when it was time to put that knowledge into action, he cowered, was not able to put into practice what he had learned. How was he to lend a hand to the divine message in his matter when he avoided the least bit of contact with the common world, which in his mind he regarded as a valley of squalor? So what is the value of all his knowledge, of all his understanding of the scriptures, of all of his wonderful speech that got so much respect from the people? The angel need workers to assist the sick. And he didn't find it among the Pharisees, but he found it somewhere else. He found an old criminal who wanted to change his way. The good workers, the good spirits, they are not interested in the titles, in how much knowledge we have. He's interested in individuals with the good intentions, the good motivation to do good. And this old criminal wants to change want to change his way. He was a tool to be used at the hands of those higher spirits, the angels, right? To assist the needy on earth, the incarnate on earth, through invisible threads of thought, inspiration, right? The angel invited him to follow him. The old thief really did want to change, so he didn't hesitate a second, put himself to work, buried the dead, which is important, was able make some medications, was able to assist the children, did whatever was needed to be done through the inspiration, from the good spirits, and hope, and brought hope, and brought consolation, and brought treatment. In doing so, won solid friendships in heaven, thereby advancing remarkably on the path towards the paradise. And the paradise here, go back again to 24, the kingdom of heavens, right? The kingdom of heavens was always in that criminal, old criminal, who's no longer old criminal, who was able to do the work, who accepted the truth, put that truth to work in the exercise of charity that he's already received, and was able to win solid friendships in heaven. And it's interesting that after listening this parable of Jesus, those present listened to this little story between admiration and disappointment. I think the disappointment here is very telling also for each one of us to reflect when we read this passage and say, oh my goodness, I gotta reading all these books and doing all this that we're doing right now. It goes for nothing, not gonna win solid friendship in heavens. The truth is, all this that we receive here are tools to put to work. And the work is what dignifies us. The work is what can bring solid friendships to us in heaven. So, in order to avoid the disappointment, we need to put all this knowledge into action. Forget the name of the spirit, Basanufo. When he went back to the spiritual world, he asked and received the permission to build a hospital in the spiritual world to receive spiritists who arrived there with tremendous affliction secondary to this self-disappointment, almost in state of despair, when they came to the realization that he received so many tools, so many wonderful things to put into action, and chose not to put those things to work. So I think the word disappointment here is very reflective to each one of us. And Jesus closed saying, virtue is always noble and honorable, but no one must not crystallize it as if it were a rare but useless jewel. Again, I bring the example, guys go to the trouble, go to medical school, do the residence, do very well during residence, get his diplomas and everything, put on the wall, and have exercise medicine. And never goes to treat the sick. What's the goodness of all that knowledge, all that understanding that you conquered? If you have the ability to play beautifully the piano, you learn, you practice, but you only close yourself inside your own room and just play for yourself. What good is it? If it's not using that ability, that aptitude that you developed through your own hard work, of course, you have the merit of doing that. But if you do not share, if you don't bring the beauty of music to share with others, it's basically of no use also. It's again a powerful message from Jesus. For us to think, what are we doing with everything that we are gaining through this doctrine, doing what we are doing here right now. Any comments? Any questions? Okay.
So next
So,
week, the Medium's book on Sunday. And tomorrow we start a new book on our Monday Fraternal Assistance meeting, Words of Life Eternal. Okay.
yeah. So, Carol, could you do a final prayer, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Elmo, and thank you, John. Thank you, Philip, today for reading for us and for all who are here participating. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the book Jesus in the Home, where we have reflected upon chapter 24, 25, and 26. The actions of love, gratitude, humility, and altruistic charity are of the greatest value to reduce darkness and negativity. Goodness and wisdom will prevail when peace and love reigns with the guidelines of renewal. The law of progress promises better days ahead for the soul of the world, with respect for all individuals and collectively representing goodwill. The steady work is done within us, and things will progressively fall into place. Complete truth is divine light, which begins with faith, hope, and charity, which is love in action. May we put these lessons and tools into action and motion as the workers of the last hour. May we courageously accept the challenges of a new paradigm. Infinite Creator and sublime intelligence, we give thanks to be together again for our studies. We are grateful for all that we have received today, and we are thankful to all who are present. We give thanks to our teachers, our loved ones, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all participants. May we pray for inner peace and especially for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center SGNY and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of charity, and goodwill, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.